we're in the people business. We just happen to do real estate. And when we looked at having these events at conferences or providing opportunities for scholarships and things like that, it was really about getting people in the room to have these conversations. Whether we all agreed or whether we didn't, it was like, how can we move and make sustainable change? And it's together.
I really want to get your take. Can you share a little bit maybe about the W Collective that you founded with Whitney Kidd, and then share a little bit about the opportunities that it presents as well as the challenges that you've seen in the industry?
Yeah, absolutely. I think when the W Collective was born, if you will, we weren't anticipating it being this huge initiative. We were really trying to solve for making work for women, and that's all women. We know that families look different for everyone. We knew that there's women who, want to be a mother and they need to be able to balance a career and be able to be present at their home life. Mm-hmm. There's women who want to be more career oriented and aren't interested in having a family, and that's okay too. And what we were seeing in this shift is, the women that maybe wanted to take time to focus on their career, they were being responsible for those that were trying to carry out their, family initiatives. So the ones that were trying to, promote their career and continue, they were getting the responsibility of those that were going out on leave and, didn't see that progress. And then, we really looked around and said, what's the first thing that we can tackle? And it just came to mind because Whitney Kidd was in a area of her life where she was, trying to grow her family, and she's been very open about this. So she mentioned this it was 2022 at Interface Student Housing, which is right on time. We're coming up on the anniversary of this conversation back in 2022, and she was so bold and so brave and said, we are not, government ordained. We can make this decision. And I really want to challenge the industry. Take a look at your parental leave. Are we making it to where those that are contributing to the business can come in and contribute, but take that time off? Are we setting up, our allies and our women counterparts for success as they go out on leave? Are we even acknowledging men in the space and what they can do? So let's look at parental leave collectively, not just for women, but for men as well, and really challenge the industry. And I mean, within 6 weeks of that launch, it was over half of the top owner operators changed their parental leave. There were some that were already super progressive. I know the Cardinals, Cardinal Group, they were already down that road. I know Peak Made was already on that road, and just so many people were like, yeah, we agree. And we were just so shocked at that outcome. It's been amazing to see.
That's huge. I mean, I didn't realize, being a man, and when I went on leave, I thought it was like this badge of honor to take less time off. But I didn't actually realize until someone, and there was Alexis Ohanian wrote about this, who's a venture capitalist, and he said, we need more men to take their time off because, to your point, when they only take 3 days off or 2 weeks, and women and the moms are taking months, it sets the moms back. Yeah. And it's not really, so actually by setting an example that, you are going to take the time off, you're going to be a good father, you're also going to be at home and support your wife, if she needs to get back to work or what needs to do, So that was really interesting to me. And also I think a lot of times we are so certain in our ways or, of the things we do, but being more curious. So, about the opportunities and the challenges from other perspectives. Oh, yeah. So,
something that with the parental leave, my husband is a very involved, very great father. Mm-hmm. But I remember with our first, he technically got 2 weeks, and 3 days in, he's like, I need to go on a 2-day trip. And I was like, it's fine, I've got this. And then the next week, something similar happened. So by the time he went back, I had already kind of gotten into this flow with my child that he didn't really know what was going on. And I feel like it kind of perpetuated from there because I was like, I don't want to have to explain this to you. And so I think really setting up a space to make it feel more equal and balanced, allows us to be able to get on the road without having to write an instruction manual
Correct.
On how to parent and where they need to go and what they need to do and what snacks that they need. You can really just kind of hand off with more of like a seamless transition. So I think a big part of, the balance part is the mental load. It's remembering the doctor's appointments and who to call and what day they need their library books returned in their bags and stuff. There's so much of that if you're not in the day-to-day, it carries a lot, and it makes the on-the-road stuff stressful, which, we're in real estate. Real estate is a physical product and a people business, and you really miss out if you're not on the road, touching, feeling, touring, having those, moments of connection.
Yeah. I mean, it's, as you're saying, it's time.
Yeah.
You are, a lot of things you can do remote, but every person I have, and why we love to do it in person here is, you gain that trust, you gain that relationship. What is it about the industry, as you talked about it, putting these playbooks out there and giving people the opportunities to come together? Because a lot of people say, oh, do we really need these groups to come together? Do we really need these affinity groups? Do we really need these opportunities? Can't we all just work remote and just use AI to run things? And wouldn't it be better? Do you have an opinion on that? Because I don't think that's the truth, but I want to hear your takes on this.
Yeah, I mean, just from, I think you talk about it a ton too, Chris. It's like in real life matters as well. AI is not going to solve for the empathy. It's not going to solve for the connection. It's going to help with, process friction and, streamlining certain parts of the business. But I think a lot of what we do is people focused. You just mentioned it. It's people centric. I'll never forget Bob Clark, one of his famous sayings he will always say is, we're in the people business. We just happen to do real estate. And I think that's something that stuck with me. And so, specifically to the W Collective, when we looked at having these events at conferences or providing opportunities for scholarships and things like that, it was really about getting people in the room to have these conversations, whether we all agreed or whether we didn't. It was like, how can we move and make sustainable change? And it's together. It's not just women in these rooms, which there are some events that there are, but it was also, how can we make sustainable change with our allies? It's inviting them to the conversation. And I think that's what's been so great about specifically the W Collective is like every single one of our events, we have such a wonderful ally attendance. It's incredible. So we're really looking forward to that at Interface this year. Again, we have a happy hour that we're going to do where we can just network, get in the room. I think being on site, to your point, matters as well. Knowing what's going on at our properties and how our teams are interacting, if we're pushing innovation or if we're, making some strategic changes. I want to know how that's landing in real life. I want to know, are we causing, more heartburn or friction, or are we really solving for the problem that we set out to? And I think that's important. I don't think innovation is something that's like a one-time thing. It's gradual small wins that add up. I think that's important.
And I think getting that feedback directly from on site is super helpful. Not that, especially in operations, it's very hierarchical. So sometimes it can feel out of place to, for a property manager to not go through their regional, to then go to the VP. But, and I think another thing is, especially lots of times people will have really good feedback, but they think it's, everybody's thinking that. They already know that feedback's already been shared. And lots of times it's not. And getting it unfiltered without the game of telephone where everything kind of gets sterilized with every step and softened. So you're not really getting as much immediate feedback. So that's always why if something's going on that I don't understand, the first thing I do is start at the site level.
Oh yeah, 100%.
It's interesting because as you just hit on an important note too, is when you think about it, stat someone shared with me was that over 55% of the people in this industry are women in real estate, commercial real estate and housing, but that less than about 30% are even at the corporate level. Many are in the field, and then probably even much lower amount are in the C-suite, right, in determining what roles that actually encompasses. So, I think you hit on allies and how important that is, because I always felt, I'm a mutt, but I wasn't sure if I should be at certain events, right? I get invited to my friend's group, the African American Alliance, right, or group, and I'm like, oh, you invited me, but should I be there? I'm not African American, I'm not Black, or invited to a women's event. And something that stuck with me was Julie Smith, Bizzuto, had shared that one of the things they had learned was if you didn't, and she shared this with me, was that if we didn't invite the people who actually made the decisions and were on the boards to the room, then we weren't going to have the change we wanted.
Right.
So having Toby Bizzuto, her CEO, to come and be there and engage and hear and listen, and I think that was the key thing was listen, right? Sit in, participate, listen, and support. And so that's something for me that I've actually taken great heart in, is to be in the room when I'm allowed to, or when I'm invited to, I should say. But, let's dive into maybe, because one of the things I'm excited about is Interface. I think Interface is a great example of an event, and we'll go into other events. But you're doing, when you partner with an event, how do you think about that? Is it that you want to have like a panel? Is it getting people together to kind of engage on certain topics? Is it purely just the opportunity of networking is a huge thing? Because I think all of those exist, but what is it that maybe stands out for you and that the W Collective has found and you've discovered?
Yeah, I think Rich Kelly and Randy Sheeran, they have been just so wonderful for us as a partnership at Interface. And they've always been very open and very supportive with what we want to do, and have really given us that, opportunity to discuss what we wanted to. And so we always historically have had a panel of, different conversations, different perspectives. I think, a lot of times what we're trying to solve for from a panel is giving up and coming emerging leaders, but also industry vets in maybe a department that's not, well discussed from a woman's perspective, and we want to give them that opportunity. And it has been so awesome. I think the past few years, like, we had so many incredible women from capital markets one year, and then last year it was women in construction and development, and this year we're very operator focused, where we're talking about women in leadership, making those decisions, and how you can erode leadership when you're not tapping into things like empathy, and making sure that we are centralizing people first. And I think what's also important, and what we're excited about to showcase this year, is operationally, like, decisions that are being made from women in those rooms, and how impact is being driven down. So how are you seeing results, not just kind of the fluffy aspect of it? How are you driving results with that as well? So I think Rich has been great with giving us that opportunity. And then we also do kind of like a mix and mingle. We've always historically done a happy hour that's been well attended. I think we've got over 90 plus RSVPs right now, which is incredible. We're very excited.
I will be there.
Yeah, I can't wait. And it's really been an opportunity for people to network, if they're talking deals, if they're talking about, how can I show up, if it's a photo op, if it's good food. It's really just like connecting with your peers and having a moment to breathe in such a high stakes conference where you're constantly, meeting, running.
Right.
I know I feel like I'm crazy running every time.
You get a moment to catch up with friends, friends at the end of the day. Because I think, especially for women, the word networking creates a lot of anxiety. Yes. It's like, oh, I don't want to go to this networking event, and, stick my hand out and introduce myself. Something that's really helped me over the last 10 years is kind of reframing what the word networking actually means. It does not mean selling. It does not mean, selling your company, selling yourself. It's really about building relationships, rapport, and understanding what other people's goals are and how your network. It's not networking. It's how, what who how can that help other people, and hopefully people that have a sense of reciprocity that will then, want to help you with your goals or your issues. Because I always tell people, set aside, even if it's just a day a week, to have a coffee or a lunch with someone that you maybe haven't spoken to in 3, 6, 2 years. I mean, time goes by quick.
It really does.
And so, when you've had a cup of coffee with someone, when you don't need anything from them or don't want anything or don't think that they can maybe help you, and then you pick up the phone, you're like, hey, I noticed that, you're working with X, Y, and Z, and we're looking at getting into that same space. Can you make an introduction? For me, it just feels so much less anxiety inducing, and so authentic is the next word that was going to come out of my mouth.
Love that. I think a lot about that. I think to my old self when I was selling, and you think you always had to plug your product, right? You think about people on stage plugging their product, or in a conversation, well, tell me what you're doing, and it's my company. And it's like, no, it doesn't need to be. It can literally be yourself. And so I think something you hit on, I have really gone deep into understanding people's superpowers. Number one, understanding a challenge in life or work. And then number three is walking away. How can I be helpful? Right. With nothing in return.
Yeah.
And I think when you take that mindset of being able to help people without something in return, well, then you're not let down all the time.
Right.
Because most people aren't going to do that. But number two, it's pretty incredible to be able to be that silent helper. So that's been a great thing for me, is to be able to help others. I'll ask you, I mean, in terms of getting together at these events, especially being, in the C-suite and leading up technology, leading up operations, and at the end of the day, when a technology is rolled out, it's really your team who has to deal with it, right? Throughout the organization. And the success and failure can not be that technology. It can actually be the acceptance and willingness of the teams, right?
And that's the biggest piece. And that's always the piece that I'm thinking about. I'm not on the tech side. I'm not sitting there testing things out, but I am thinking about the cadence in which we're rolling out new technologies. And even if it's not rolling out new technologies, it's, people can only synthesize so much change at any given point in time. So it sounds silly, but we completely revamped our on-site dress code a few months ago. And that was, I didn't think it was going to be a big change. It was a big change. And then when we wanted to, put something else out, Shannon Fela, our head of culture and support, was like, the dress code was a big change. I think we need to hold off another few weeks. And I was completely, didn't even have that on my radar. So it's, I think, really prioritizing, what gets rolled out at a cadence where there's time to accept, digest, and provide feedback and synthesize that feedback before you go on to the next thing. Because otherwise, it's too much noise. So that's how we kind of think about things.
No, I fully agree with you. I think whenever I'm looking to roll something out, it's about the sequencing of things. Is this something that needs to be stabilized operationally first? Because if it needs to be stabilized, you really shouldn't innovate, right? Because then you're needing to have a foundation set to where you can transform, in my opinion. And to your point, you do not want to fatigue the organization at all, because that's going to immediately erode trust from your teams that you're trying to solve for. We always look at, is this solve for the resident? Does this solve for our employees? And is this going to have an ROI to the asset? And so we're looking at those three kind of simultaneously and knowing, when is this ROI going to hit? Are we going to see this immediately? Is this going to be in months? And being able to share that story with your side of the business to get that adoption. Because to me, we can have all the coolest ideas in the world. We can have the most futuristic tech. But if it doesn't work, or if it's not well thought out and key business stakeholders are not involved in the conversation, you immediately kind of handcuff yourself, in my opinion. I think change management is hard for anyone to absorb. So you really need those people to kind of help champion it and make sure, what does this look like for success, and really define that up front before you make those changes, in my opinion.
I mean, especially in housing, I always have said, and when people ask, something I learned over the last 15 years is in real estate is a asset. Unlike a lot of businesses that have to buy things in the cloud and whatnot, and startups buying, selling software, technologies, in real estate, it's still here.
Yeah.
And as long as you're leasing it up, you may not have to make changes to that
that
stable asset if it's making a profit and doing well and everyone's happy. But I actually find, and a lot of people say, oh, Proptech is dead, or Proptech's in danger, or it's got a bad, tough time for Proptech right now. These blanket statements, right? It's just like people make blanket statements.
Did you see us all prep for that? We were like, what? What do you mean?
But it's funny because I think a lot of people will say that, and just like people will say conferences are dead. And it couldn't be further from the truth, and I think with AI, people are going to be yearning for that in-person experience more and more. And I'm hearing from a lot of leaders, similar to, your peers and maybe from yourselves, is that they actually need to do a better job of understanding the experience, the human side. Yeah. So can you share a little bit about that as we think about Proptech, maybe start there, and then the human side is are you more excited about Proptech or less excited? Do you think there's more problems to solve? Because many people will tell me there's fewer problems. I disagree. I think there's always going to be problems. And number two is, how does the human side tie in with the technology? Because there's human problems that possibly could be solved, like you said, using technology.
Yeah, I think I'm kind of surprised by that statement, that Proptech is dead. Again, the main thing that I've seen from rollouts is the technology's great. It's the rollout and the buy-in. And I think you hit on something really interesting when you kind of intimated that like Proptech should be kind of augmenting your strengths and not hiding your weaknesses, which I think is a very counterintuitive way to think about using technology. I think a layman would think, oh, I'm going to use technology to help where I'm not strong. Whereas I feel like you're saying it should be, an opportunity to level up where you're already, where your core competencies are, using technology to level that up, which I think is really interesting because that gives you a safety net that if you need to pause or you need to pivot or you need to tweak, you, number one, have the foundation that you can go back to, pen and paper if you need to, but also you have the competency to really maximize and understand like what's working or what's not. If you use it as a Band-Aid on a bullet hole and you're bleeding out, you're not going to know why, and then it's, oh, the technology doesn't work.
Yeah, and you're wasting resources, you're wasting people's time, and for me, I'm a risk management. That's first. I'm going to look at, does this manage risk? What's the ROI? Does this solve for our people, the asset? Kind of look at why we're doing this, not just because it's cool or what we should. Do we have this need?
Yeah, and I think that the risk management is, hyper focused and a huge thing in student because every single year it's one shot. And whatever you end up with on August 15th, you're stuck with that for the rest of the year. Whereas in, whether that's what your transaction goals are, turning a rent roll is turning the Titanic versus in, conventional, you're going off the last 30, 60, 90 leases. Whether it's lender covenants, you're dealing with those for the next 12 months. So it's very high beta, I feel like, in student, especially conversely compared to conventional. It's that you have to mitigate your downside, but when the going's good, you also got to push really heavily because you don't know what next year is going to look like. So I feel like that's the implementation in student is so important, even more so over conventional or other business models.
100% agree. Yeah.
Interesting. And to your point, it's so wild because you're here. Many people blame the technology. Or say that doesn't work, right? Yeah. And it's funny because I think about like right now with AI, and I heard a speaker in VC say that essentially the AI was in Andreessen Horowitz, and they said that the companies will come and go, but the technology won't. So even if we have these dips and these bubbles, many people who lived through the 2000 bubble and the 2008 bubble and the 2017, and where's the time go, right? But these bubbles, whether it's real estate or whether it's other sectors, it comes and goes.
I feel like
and the
it's
cycles.
always real estate or tech.
Right?
I feel like they pass the baton.
That's why it's great to be. It's just a great conversation. That's why I do this. So I'm curious to know too is we talk so much about technology and what it can do for us to make us more powerful and empower our teams, but when we talk about the culture. The culture's great. And my last guest, who was just before you, said, people talk in platitudes, and people talk and talk and talk, whether it's innovation and culture, but actually showing up for our people. What are some examples, though, of ways that you show up for your team, and maybe ways should be, you've seen other people, and you can feel free to call them out, that they've shown up for you, or you've seen others show up for the others in our industry that actually make an outsized impact that may actually not cost any money or very little amounts of money?
I think one small thing, and we can debate about remote versus going in the office. I'm lucky I live very close to my office, but coming into work, I find it, especially for my junior team, I'm at the point where I manage remote well, I manage up well. I've set in, weekly checkpoints, whether those are just to, build rapport. I go into the office 3-4 days a week for my team to help, grow and develop them. Our culture and support is headed, again, I dropped her name for the second time, Shannon Fela.
She's the best.
She is the best.
She's the best.
She does something where she calls every single GM in our portfolio once a quarter and does red, yellow, green. How are you feeling? What are your goals? And that gets synthesized up to, these are the people that, are looking for growth opportunities. These are the people that are maybe thinking of starting a family or, need to start staying put in one market. So just having that information is really important. And I think in our results of what her and her team does, you're always going to have the property management companies are always going to have high turnover,
Especially in student.
Whether that's 60% annually. I've seen it in conventional sometimes as high as 80 plus. Where I think we've really succeeded is the people that have 4, 5, 6, 7+ years tenure, even on site. We've gotten to a point where, I'm going to knock on wood. We're rarely surprised when people move on to other opportunities. I feel like if you are surprised,
it's okay. We'll AI all these things out of the same. Don't worry.
That's you. Oh, I'm just knocking everything over. If you are surprised, I feel like that's a deficiency in kind of the feedback loop. So, again, anything culture and student quarters, Shannon's been with us about 5 years, and that's all she does. She eats, breathes, sleeps it. And I feel like we've seen the results from her efforts on that.
Amazing. I think, again, you all are in student housing, which is one of the most incredible worlds because, student housing is a space that it's oftentimes your first time away from home. It was mine. And that world got very big when I went to college and all these different types of people and places, and it makes such an impact on what you're expecting for the rest of your life around living, real estate, the upkeep of a unit, right? The process of your life, let alone work. Think about RAs, right? Who are essentially property managers, right? Or community managers or organizers. And I remember that would be an interesting stat. How many people came from being an RA and are in real estate, right?
Yeah, I think it's so funny because I used to be the demographic that we sell to. I started out in student housing as my entire adult career. So I was the student that I'm trying to future-proof my buildings against because I was insane. Wes Dees could probably, just, double click on that and say, yes, she was, because I've known him for a really long time. He's known me since I was 17. But I think what's been really awesome is that in student, we have such a unique opportunity. We're at times, like in my case, this was my first real job, which is awesome, but we're also someone else's first home outside of home. So we have the opportunity, sometimes it's both, right? We hire someone it's their first, job away from home, and it's their first home away from home. And so we just have that unique opportunity, and that's one thing that I do love. I feel like I'm name dropping a lot, but I feel like Matt Maxa does that a lot. He's our COO at Article, and I feel like he's never lost that people aspect of the importance and the care that means and the privilege of that. And I think that's always stood out. He's done a great job at W Collective events where I'm sure there's probably so much more he could be doing than going and doing a wellness walk with the W Collective. But you know where he's at? He's at that wellness walk, first in line, walking. And just being someone whose presence and shows up for the people, I think is so, so important. And, I hope to also do that for my team. I think my team has a joke that they say, if Erica hasn't said hello or good morning by 7:45, 8 a.m., someone needs to call an ambulance. She's not well. And so just making sure you show up and be present and not just so task-oriented, I think is so important.
Love that. And some great advice here and tips, about engaging with others, especially meeting people for the first time, not, overindulging, not over being salesy in your networking. What's something for next week, at the events? You talked about a wellness walk. good way to get to know people, whether it's a coffee or getting together. Are you doing one next week, or what are you doing? What are the types of things what W Collective is doing next week that you can share?
Yeah, so W Collective is doing the happy hour on Tuesday night, so 5:30 to 7:30. Make sure you go to the Student Housing Business Innovator Awards, but
Awesome.
Definitely having that space where you can connect. I do know that Katie Mancuso Rice, who is with Tailwind Group, she does have a wellness walk that she structures, so she's got that posted on LinkedIn. Definitely one that I'm really going to work on going to. I told her, I was like, I support you 1,000%. I'm a good middayer, not the best morning person, but I'm going to show up this year. I'm saying it out loud so everybody can hold me accountable.
Hold you accountable. You got it.
But she has so much attendance in that, and just getting a moment to just breathe and, again, not just be so transactional, but to be able to be hyper-focused. We'll be doing a W Collective breakfast with our scholarship winner, which will be very exciting. And then, of course, we have the panel on Monday as soon as we start. So looking forward to that.
Love that. Well, as we tie up our time here, I want to ask, what's one bold move you'd encourage young women to make if they want to accelerate their career in real estate?
I think for me, it's being bold and not being afraid to network, share what you're looking to accomplish. I think if I had to give, feedback or advice for the next generation is, trusting your voice and networking to others and building bridges to where you can extend the table and not limit it. I think that that's a lot of when women think networking, they think it's all like laughing and agreeing, and that's not the case sometimes. I've been in awesome opportunities where we just definitely disagreed on certain things, but I learned something. And so getting in rooms and being in places where even if you feel like you don't belong in that moment, taking the step and being brave and leaning into that and making sure that you are very grateful for those connections and send the elevator back down, I think.
Yeah, and one thing that I really started focusing on probably about 10, 15 years ago and is something that I try to, communicate to people that I'm working with or are, looking for the next step. People who work with me still find this very funny, but I know it's true. I'm actually very uncomfortable with conflict. And it was about 15 years ago, I had to meet with an industrial psychologist kind of as part of an interview process for a development company I worked for. And he was like, you were very uncomfortable with conflict. And I'm like, yeah, I like everyone to get along. And he's like, you've got to start like working out that muscle. Like conflict is not bad. Harmony, when it's just everyone agreeing to agree, doesn't get anything accomplished. And so I started doing really silly small things. Like if I was at a restaurant and someone brought me my order and it was very obviously wrong, and before I would just eat it and I'd like take the pickles off or like scrape the mayonnaise off. And now, again, conflict doesn't...
I'm the one they call when they're like, can you send my food back? I'm like, yes, we can.
Yes,
absolutely.
And now I'm that person because I took small, and especially starting out in low stake things, is just huge. Speaking up. And again, I think some people think conflict is like,
yeah,
it's just using your voice. I'm sorry. I think if I didn't ask for this way, I apologize. Well, actually, no. My other friends would tell me don't apologize. But just saying, this isn't what I ordered. Can you help me? Or, in other instances, I always do this. Poor Delta. I love Delta. But
Sure.
I'll be like, this happened with my flight. How can you make me feel better about this? And they'll be like, we'll give you 2,000 miles. I'm like, okay. But starting out in those kind of low stakes situations, I think help you speak up. You help become you more comfortable speaking up when it becomes higher stakes, whether that's for yourself, whether that's, I probably speak up more for my team members than anything. Because especially kind of in my world where I am oscillating between property management and kind of investor relations, I feel like it can be a very easy place. Oh, it's ops. It's the on-site team. And I will defend them. I will raise my hand and be like, that's actually not what's going on here. So I think that's probably the bold move is learning to be comfortable with conflict.
Because I do think that women manage kind of two things. When they're walking into rooms, number one, sometimes we have imposter syndrome. I think to this day I have it. But two, it's number one, feeling like you belong in the space, but two, also managing the perception. Am I coming off too direct? Am I being too agreeable? Am I this? All of this like mental.
Should I be apologizing?
Right.
Sorry, I said sorry.
Yeah,
Yeah.
100%. So I think leaning into who you are, the decisions that you're making, being coachable is also super important. I think those are the things that we would share.
Yeah.
Great. Anything else that we should cover before? I know we're going to do a round 2 with both of you in the future. But anything else you want to leave us with today?
I think, and we had a panel a week or so ago internally about it's Women's Leadership, Women's History Month is March. I don't necessarily think of myself as a woman leader. I think of myself as a woman. I think of myself as a woman that's a leader. But a big thing is, again, touching on imposter syndrome. I think knowing that's a feeling, and I think that's where some of these in-person connections become important, because giving a name to some of these feelings, giving a commonality to, Erica, she's a badass. And if she has these feelings of self-doubt, maybe they're more systematic than idiosyncratic. So really giving a name to that, I think, helps it eliminate its power. The other thing is a big statistic that I love is, and I can't remember the exact stats, but if there's a job posting, a woman won't apply for that job unless they have like 9 or 10 out of the 10 qualifications. Whereas males lots of times are like, I've heard of that company, or I have 2 of those, and they'll put themselves out there, where men are a lot of times promoted off of aptitude, where women already have to lead in the role without the title in order to get to the next step. So
I would like to retweet that.
Fascinating, yeah.
So I think, one of probably the first areas where I considered myself a leader was when I first started working with third-party property management companies. They did not, I was their client, but there wasn't a direct, like, I'm your boss, but it was really coming together for a common goal. And that was really my first time that I worked with women directly towards common goals. Up until that point, I've worked in nothing but, I've usually only been the only woman in the room. So that was my first kind of taste of coming together and leading with authenticity. And because a lot of it's about trust too.
Yeah, 100%. I think for me, what I want to lead with is just the excitement for the future. I think our industry has just done such a wonderful job coming, full circle almost. And I think that we have the opposite problem where we think Proptech is dying. I think we have a hunger for it. I think in past lives back in 2020 and COVID really hit, I think innovation was considered ancillary. And I think now it really is a pillar of our organization. And to me, that's exciting. I think when someone asked me this, it was at NAA's Cultivate, and I loved this question. And the question is how do you want to be perceived as a leader? And for me, it was, I want someone to look at me and know that the future is possible. They're not scared of change. They're not scared of the future, but they are excited to walk into that, and they're going to be someone that champions that. So that's something that I want to take away. It's just, we always talk about all the things that we need to improve and what we need to do, but man, we do a lot right. We've got great people. We get to sit with friends that technically competitors, but get to sit in a room and share a space like that. That's what I'm excited about.
I love that. No, this is a great way to end and segue to our next episode in the future. But I absolutely agree. I couldn't be more amped about Proptech. I think Proptech and technology in general is going to be the greatest differentiator for most people moving forward. As a CEO I just heard, they said, and she said that they used to listen to the financial people in the room, and now they're listening to the technology people in the room, and their finance people are listening too. So really interesting stuff. Well, thank you for taking the time out of your busy schedules. Can't wait to have you back again soon. And again, for meeting up in real life. Gosh, I feel like we're getting to see each other a lot more now.
I know.
We're making it happen. We're gonna have some. We may have to do. We do the events on the road. We'll have to do some events soon. Maybe have a panel where we can have a whole audience, and maybe we do this on stage. All right. Well, thank you both for coming. It was a blast.